So sales taking off could be one of the best things for a business owner, but when it comes to, a new set of problems to solve, growth can be one of those things where you're really limited by the money in the bank, which really leads the business owner to kind of choose between whether they want to invest in R&D, marketing, inventory, and it's one of those things that could be really stifling. So, it would be great to build everything at once and really kind of scale fast, but that's where our next presenter really comes in. Sean Clercq, he is the founder of a company called Kickfurther, and they approach purchase order funding a little bit differently, and that's really the lifeblood of any small or medium-sized business, is that cash flow. So, hi Sean, how you doing?
Hey Joel, very good. Glad to be here.
Cool. And but before we get kicked off, I really want to see if you could take a minute and maybe explain Kickfurther and kind of how you got it started, so that our audience can learn a little bit about your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. So like many of, I imagine, your community members, I was running my own merchandising business, and we were selling to a retailer that was a catalog retailer, and things were going great. So we went from $600,000 of sales in the first year to over $1 million in our second year. We were growing really quickly, but as we were growing, our purchase orders were growing as well. So we went from a $70,000 purchase order to a $150,000 purchase order. Mm-hmm. And the deposit I had to pay to my factory went up from $30,000 to now $60,000 or $70,000 that I had to pay my factory, 3 months before the goods were produced, delivered, and I got paid for the shipment. Right. So for a while in the business, I was able to just cash flow the business with help from my parents' company. Mm-hmm. But we got to a certain point where the purchase orders were getting large enough and the deposits were getting large enough that we needed to find a scalable solution. And when I went out to market, this was back in 2010, 2011, there just weren't a lot of good options to fund my business. I talked to an AR Factor. I talked to a few, and the best rate I could find was a 5% discount per month on my receivable. So that was extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the market, and I saw that my sister, very entrepreneurial as well, she started a Kickstarter, and within 2 weeks she had managed to raise $30,000. There was no interest, no guaranteed repayment. It was a gift, from right. These people that were supporting her entrepreneurship. So it seemed to me that there was a big disconnect between the fact that brand new businesses could go crowdfunding and could find funding to get their business started, and there was very, very expensive capital available to businesses like mine that were established with a track record of sales, but there seemed to be a big gap between those two. So we said, why can't we bring that community that's supporting these entrepreneurs through crowdfunding to these established businesses that have purchase orders, that have inventory needs? Let's bring those groups together, and we can create a relationship that's good for everyone. And that's really what started Kickfurther.
That's an awesome story, and I think a lot of people don't understand how hard it is when you hit that scale. And that path is really, it's one of those things that you don't understand until you experience it yourself. And especially even if you're in a company that's going through that, you don't see all sides of that, the puzzle. But what are some options for a business owner to raise cash when it comes to sales taking off? Whether that be a VC bank, what kind of options are out there?
Yeah, so, fortunately, there are a good number of options in the market. So it's just really a question of access, right? So initially, back before 2008 and Dodd-Frank, community banks and these local business banks were the best opportunity. You would go, you would meet with a banker, mm-hmm.
form
a relationship, and if they believed in your business, you would get a line of credit that you could use to grow the business. Right. That's largely gone away, and it's much tougher to find these relationship bankers today, right? Now there's been a huge consolidation into the major 5 financial institutions in the US. So what's taken the place of that relationship community banking, there's a few different forms. So one is called WIP financing, WIP. So that's work in progress financing. And if you find a WIP financer, the benefit there is that they will take a riskier position. So they'll fund you even before your inventory has been produced and before you've been able to ship, right? So they'll fund the work in progress, as the name mm-hmm. denotes, right? but they also typically charge a little bit of a higher rate because they're assuming a riskier position. There are accounts receivables factors. That's what I was using for my merchandising business. Now, an account receivable factor, they will take the receivable. Once you've delivered the inventory on a purchase order, they'll say, all right, great. Now, let's say Target owes you $10,000. We'll give you $9,000 of cash today. And then when it's time for Target to pay, they're going to pay us the $10,000.
Right.
So they take a discount against what you're expected to be paid, but they'll give you that cash up front so you can run the ongoing operations of your business. There is equity financing, which is there's a lot of crowdfunded options. And for consumer product goods, now there's these blended options that look quite interesting. So for instance, Republic.co, you can have a mix of rewards crowdfunding plus an equity-based raised, or Circle Up focuses on equity crowdfunding for consumer product goods. There's also, of course, AngelList, and there's crowdfunder.com. So there's a lot of these crowdfunding equity options. There's also a lot of VC firms that are focused on funding consumer product goods, and those guys are going to be typically that deal just takes longer for you to put together when you go the equity route, right? And the other issue with equity is if you're at $1 million value today and you're funding $300,000 of inventory, when you grow to 10 million, you're going to need to take on more equity. And slowly over time, your ownership of your company just gets continually diluted down to the point where you can own less than 10% of the company that you're working on, right? So equity has that challenge, and for consumer product goods, typically you don't get as big of a markup on the valuation as a technology company. So typically you're forking over a pretty significant equity chunk in order to get the financing you need. And then, kind of newer to the market is merchant cash advance or daily debit. So these are the guys like Cabbage, On Deck Capital. They pretty much just look at your revenue stream. They'll say, all right, whatever you made before, we'll fund 25% of it. And then they charge you an arm and a leg for it, right? So these are what I always tell people about daily debit is they literally can't call it a loan because then it would be usury, right? That's how high the rates are. So they had to invent a new product, which they called a merchant cash advance, in order to lend at the rates that they lend at. So really, really high rates, very expensive, but it's super fast. And all you need to do is be able to demonstrate that you've earned revenue in the past. So it's very flexible, very fast, but very expensive. And then what we're doing at Kick Further, obviously I'm doing it because I think it's, the best opportunity is we bring a crowd in to help fund the inventory, and we put that inventory on a consignment contract. And as that inventory sells, the business has the obligation to pay our community back.
Well, it's really cool that now we have so many different ways that you can go about solving that problem of cash flow. But how does the traditional purchase order financing and AR factoring work?
So the way traditional purchase order financing works is, let's say you get a purchase order from Target and it's for $10,000, and your cost of goods on that is $5,000. So you need to pay your factory, and every business is different. So this example isn't going to fit 100%, but let's say you have to pay your factory 100% upfront, right? Which isn't typical, but let's just use that as an example. So you have to pay your factory $5,000 to start production, and then it's going to take 30 days production. You have to book the slot. It's going to take 30 days shipping, and then once you deliver to Target, they might have a net 60 payment term. So you have to pay $5,000 of cash up front, but you might not get paid by Target for 4 months from when that cash is out of your pocket. So where does a factor come in? Well, a factor would come in, or a PO financer would come in and say, you would take your purchase order from Target and say, look, Target has agreed to pay me $10,000 if I deliver X, Y, and Z to them, right? And I have the ability to deliver X, Y, and Z because I've done it before. I've produced those products. I have a relationship with a supplier. So what I want is for you to give me cash. I need $5,000 to pay my supplier. They can either give me the $5,000 and then we split the difference on the purchase order. And that's one opportunity. What's more usual is they will give me a discount against the total. So they'll say, look, it's a $10,000 purchase order. Here's $9,000 of cash today. Now you go do the production, make sure the goods are delivered. And when Target pays, we're going to change the payee. The money's going to come straight to our bank account, right? And on that deal, what's very usual is that you'll see covenants that say if Target pays late, then they're going to come back after the business owner for X% per week that
Right.
Target pays late. So it's not so simple that once you've sold the receivable, you're out of the transaction. Oftentimes, you still have to make sure that the vendor is paying your factor on time. Otherwise, you can suffer some penalties there. But that's pretty much the way it works. You get the cash up front, you can manage the production, and then you get to keep the balance. And then your purchase order gets paid directly to a financer.
Okay. It's such an interesting concept because when you're going through this, it's really like going for a mortgage, for anybody that has, what kind of information do you need to have in hand before, approaching either a Kickfurther, a bank or a private investor? What are some of the basics that, you need to be able to demonstrate to qualify?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is they're going to be a little bit different depending on which funding platform you're looking for, but there's going to be some common earmarks, right? So one is everybody's going to want to know that you're an entity, a real entity in good standing within the United States. So your articles of incorporation or, your LLC formation documents, whatever is required, people are going to want to see that you're up to date on your taxes, that you have a corporation in good standing, that there's no other liens or or interests on your business, right? That you have to pay off some big tax lien or something. Okay. So that's not to say that if you do have some of those complications, it's impossible to find financing, but it will make you'll have to explain those away. So a nice clean set of documents about how the business is in good standing, the taxes are paid up, the business is incorporated, that is pretty important. What most businesses will require, and this is often before you'll ever get a purchase order, is you're going to need certification that your product can be sold in the United States. So some kind of, whether it's a food product or whether it's a clothing product, there are inspections and certifications, ROHS if you've got a battery, or the UL certification if you need to plug in, Right. So there's all these different certifications depending on your product. A savvy financial partner is going to require those certifications and want to make sure that you've got no issues and your product has passed muster with the relevant regulatory agencies. If it's going to be a PO or AR financing deal, they're going to want to see the purchase order, and they're likely going to want to confirm that purchase order with the person that originates it, with your retailer. And then they're also going to want to see a financial statement and a model that says essentially, this is how much money we make, this is what our goods cost, this is how much we make, this is why we're going to be able to pay you back, right? And if you've got those things together, an ability to say, we make money, we'll be able to pay you back, we have guaranteed sales on a purchase order, and our business is in good standing, typically you'll be able to find the financing you need. And then you'll often also find, depending on the channel, you'll also have a personal guarantee requirement. So if your personal credit is in a good spot, oftentimes you can leverage that to get financing for your business as well. And that's less important for some stuff like, for instance, equity financing. A lot of venture firms understand that, founders sometimes go into debt to start their business, right, and to their business. So your credit score might not be as good as it could be, but you can find investors that'll be understanding of that fact.
Okay. And what kind of timeline are we looking at for those kind of things? Is Kickfurther faster than a bank, or is a bank faster than a private investor? What kind of timelines are you looking at?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Timelines are variable. Now, with VC firms, with equity financing, depending on some of these crowdfunding equity things will move a little bit quicker. You can get a decision, let's say, in a month or 60 days. Okay. That's very, very fast. Yeah. For an equity deal, the short timeline from starting the conversation to closing a deal, very, very fast, is 3 months. Okay. Much more usual will be like 4 months up to 6 months it can take, right, to close one of those deals. So that's not ideal. If you've got a purchase order on hand and you're looking to get it financed, equity probably isn't the option you want to go for. The fastest is going to be daily debit merchant cash advance. Those guys take a snapshot of your revenue. 48 hours later, you'll have cash in your bank account if you qualify. That is pretty much the fastest that's offered on the market. And it just comes with those, covenants and the higher rates.
Yeah.
kind of living in a middle space between that is AR factors, where they can move pretty quickly, especially if you have a pending opportunity and you can convince them. Sometimes with those groups, it can be difficult just to get the meeting and to get it in a timeline that works for you. But if you can make them understand, they've been in the business where they understand it is time sensitive, oftentimes you can get to a decision more quickly with someone like that. With Kickfurther, our qualification process takes about 2 days. And then if you launch and you get through, it takes roughly 7 business days to have the funds available to be released. So we can wrap everything in roughly two weeks for a business. So we're pretty close to what you would expect to see on a AR factor or a PO financer.
Okay. And this sounds like something that somebody should really consider and think about before they get to the point of purchase order, before they get to the end of the deal with Target or Walmart or, whatever retailer they're working with. How far ahead of the curve should they be considering? How should they get this done?
So I think that it's like when you're an entrepreneur, it's tough because there's so many hats you have to wear, right? So the question of when do you start dealing with this problem before it's right there in your face and it's a problem you have to deal with, that, you know what I mean? I always am leery about telling entrepreneurs hey, start planning for if come may be situations in the future, right? So, a lot of these situations, it's look, your first purchase order, it's not going to be the biggest purchase order, right? They're going to test you out in 5 stores before they blow you out to 500 stores. So that first PO will be manageable. By the time you see that there's an opportunity for you to start growing that first purchase order, the test PO, you should anticipate, right? Anticipate success and say, all right, if this comes back 100 times bigger, how am I funding it, right? So when you have that first indication of success, hey, somebody likes this, somebody wants to test it, somebody wants to start using this product, that's the time where it makes a lot of sense to say, all right, let's start laying the groundwork to make sure that when that big growth opportunity comes to my door, that I'm ready for it, that I've done the necessary work, right?
Right.
I don't think that it makes that much sense if you're in extremely early stages where you're still selling direct to consumer. You're not even having conversations with buyers at major retailers to start considering purchase order financing. Now, the nice thing, what I would say is that with Kickfurther, we are not specific to PO financing. So if you see indications of success and you think that that's the next logical growth step, you can start building a relationship with our community ahead of that anticipatory success. But it's one of those things where I think probably one of the most valuable considerations for a business owner, and I don't think a lot of people look at this, is that the opportunity to improve your margins and build a better business by buying in larger quantities and controlling that conversation with your supplier. So I come from a supply chain background, and so I know that for a factory, the difference of producing 500 pieces and 5,000 pieces can be a 30% reduction in your cost price, if not more, right? And a lot of businesses I've seen don't even have that conversation when they're ramping up, and that creates so many opportunities for you. So that's one of the things that I think look, do you have more opportunities to sell into more retailers offering a lower price point if you could buy 6 months of inventory and hold on to 5,000 pieces instead of buying, a 1 month turn of 800 pieces, for instance.
Right. And that kind of leads me into our next question, which is a member question. They want to know how they can escape the rat race, growth versus profitability, because, it seems like, when you get bigger, the revenue gets put into inventory, and, as you said, it really gets reinvested. And at the end of the day, how can you escape that that never-ending funnel of growth?
Well, I don't think you want to escape the growth, right? But it's how do you get to the point where
you got to make money sometime.
That's true, right? So I guess the question is how do you get to the point where your cash flows are going to provide all the financing you need, where, inventory financing isn't going to be an issue. So, if you experience enough growth, if you're growing by 10x, you're never going to get there, right? Your cash flow is just always going to be chasing the growth of your company. That's a good problem to have. And if that's the problem you have, there will be financiers lining up to give you money, right? So that it's one of those things where it is a problem, but it's a good problem and it will resolve itself. Now, how can you accelerate the process of getting ahead of that? How can you control the negotiation, right? By saying, I don't need your money, right? Because I could do it myself. That gives you a much stronger position as a business owner. And I think that ties 100% to what I was just saying, which is, there are a lot of levers as a consumer products good company that you can pull, right? So there's negotiating with your suppliers, and it's not just negotiating on cost price. You can negotiate, and I know of businesses that have done this, where they negotiate terms with their suppliers. So just as Target gets paid net 60 days, or they get paid by Target net 60. I've seen businesses where they've negotiated with their supplier, you deliver the goods, I'll pay you in 30 days. And they've pushed that cash flow pinch down to their manufacturers. And the manufacturers, because the order volume is high enough, and because they have a track record, this business has never failed to pay, for a year or the 18 months that we've been working with them. I've seen a lot of people be very successful with that. Or you can drive your cost price down, You can also negotiate on the other end. If you have a branded, trademarked product that this retailer really, really wants, you can negotiate with them. These things aren't set in stone, right? You can push their payment term from net 60 to net 30, right? Or you can try and get a 1% discount 10-day payment term, and you can get paid in 10 days, perhaps, depending on the retailer. So there's a lot of different levers to push, and I guess, it's tough without knowing the individual situation. But what I would say is, as you're growing, you have more power, right? So with growth comes purchasing power, comes negotiation power, and you should not be afraid to exercise that power in order to make your business stronger. And oftentimes that means putting some of this pinch and putting some of this pain onto the partners that you're working with. But that's the reality of business. And the reason that you're in the position you're in and you have to finance this inventory is because the guy ahead of you on the chain put the problem on your desk, right? So it's just the way it goes. The bigger people get more opportunities and get to control the conversation more.
I think that's a great example, that you can pass that down, because at the end of the day, the manufacturer is, reaping the rewards just as much as you are, and the shared cost there. But how does a deal work for a business owner that is going through the purchase order finance process? When you're on the receiving end, you put out all this money, you show your books, you prove that you are what you say you are and you're doing what you say you're doing. How does it work for them?
So for the business owner, the way it works is they provide. So this will be different, right, depending on which funding mechanism you're going to use. Let's say with Kickfurther, which I think we do, we share a lot of similarities with the other channels, right? Okay. So the way it works with us is the business owner provides us the necessary documentation that we need to see to fund the inventory. So whether that is again, the certifications, the business certifications, personal credit, all of the things that we would need to check. So once we get through that process and the business owner has provided the necessary information, then the next step is securing the financing, right? So now if you have all of these, if you've got all your ducks in a row, let's say, and you go now to secure financing, if you go to an AR factor, right, or a WIP or PO finance, those are the kinds of people that can give you a decision. It's unilateral. With Kickfurther, our funding decision process happens in a marketplace setting. So essentially, once you get through our QC process, we launch you up to the community, and we let the community decide whether or not they like your product and your inventory. Assuming the funding is successful, now we've secured the funds from a whole bunch of different members, or if you're going through one of the other places, they've got the board or their LPs to buy in and say, yeah, let's go forward with this deal. Either way, the funding is secured. Now what you're getting into are the mechanics of the financing itself. So the way Kickfurther works and the way that some WIP work in progress and some PO finance businesses will work is they're going to want to pay your suppliers directly. So instead of the cash going directly into your bank account for you to pay your factory, they're going to say, all right, let us know who your factory is, and they're going to issue payment directly against those funds to your factory to initiate production. If the purchase order, let's say this is PO financing, has been assigned, once the goods are produced, they're shipped, they've been received by the retailer, Target or whoever. Then Target, their accounts payable department has received instruction that now the bank account, instead of bank account, ABC123, which is your business bank account that they would normally pay, they're going to receive a different set of instructions that says, instead for this purchase order, you're going to pay bank account XYZ, which is going to be the financer's bank account.
And I'm sure typically they get that all the time.
Exactly. And these retailers are quite comfortable with it. What they typically do not want to see, and what we encounter, is they don't want to be making this payee change like 9 times in a week, right? So they prefer if you find a partner and that can be a scalable solution for you, that they don't have to go through this operational process of changing the payee for you. Some of the retailers are great, and they'll give you an online dashboard and you can just do it all yourself, right? So depending on the retailer, depending on the financer, the process is a little bit different, but that's typically how it works: is qualification, secure funding, the mechanics of the financing, and then the payback, which is the receivable getting paid to the financer, and then the balance being distributed appropriately.
And what kind of costs are incurred on the businesses? And, how much does it cost to work with either Kickfurther or, a bank, anything along these lines?
So so just to go through a few of them: equity financing, it's not like a cash cost, right? So you're giving up ownership of your company. So that's one of the things where it's kind of
the most expensive.
It might be the most expensive depending on, how things go. Right. It might be the cheapest, right? So it's really hard to say. That's one of those things that it's tough to evaluate compared to the others. So then you look at, bank loans are going to be the best. You see businesses, if you can secure a bank loan at like 8% APR, 10% APR, typically that's going to be just about the cheapest financing you can find. With AR factoring and PO financing, what is very typical is a discount rate. The minimum will be around 3% a month. You can see as high as like 5-6% a month. So that means that if you've got let's just take a $10,000 purchase order, and you need 3 months of financing at 5% a month, that would be a 15% discount, which means you get $8,500 of cash against a $10,000 PO, right?
Okay.
Daily debit products are going to be quite expensive. They depend on how much revenue you do. So essentially, the more money you make, the cheaper that product will be for you. Their maximum rate is 10% plus 1.5% per month. Which is 11.5% a month, which, really gets you into these like crazy rates.
Yeah.
And with Kickfurther, the way we work is we have a success fee, which our base rate is typically 5%. For certain businesses, we offer discounts. It's the same rate that Kickstarter has as a base rate. And we cover the merchant costs, like we allow credit cards on our platform. So that's where a lot of our fee goes. But and then there's the profit offered to the community. So the community profit is typically anywhere between 1.5% to 3% a month being offered to our community members. And that 1.5% to 3%, it's determined by the business. So, we offer our recommendations. We definitely know what the appetite is for our community, but it is a true marketplace model. So at the end, the business gets to decide what they want to offer to see if it flies or not.
Excellent. Is there a way to lower that total transaction cost?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Kickfurther, what we've seen and what businesses have been very successful is just building out integrity by using the platform. So it's a relationship, right? And your first time that you're being introduced to the community, it's tough for them to evaluate, like, who is this guy? Who is this business?
Right.
But we've seen a business of ours last year. He started in 2017. He ran 7 different co-ops. At the end of when he ran his 8th co-op, he funded at less than 1% a month. So that was our lowest funding rate, but he had a lot of success, turned it over quite a lot, really proved himself out to the community. And then it's natural that when as you build out a relationship and people see that you're a good deal, then you've got the negotiation power, right? So now you can offer a lower rate, and the community competes with each other to make sure they get in on the good deal that they view your business being.
Do deals ever not get funded?
Yes, they do. So we had traditionally, our historical funding rate is 90%. So if they get through our quality control process, if we launch you on our platform, you have a very, especially if you follow the guidelines that we recommend, you have a very, very good chance of getting funded on Kickfurther. We actually had 100% funding success rate over the last 6 months.
Wow.
But it is the case where the profit offered is a little bit too low, or the community wants to see, a personal guarantee attached to it, or, we do see comments. We have a discussion board on each of the co-ops we launch. So sometimes they don't get funded, but there's always an opportunity to relaunch with better terms to secure the funding you need.
Okay. And what else does specifically Kickfurther kind of help with? I heard that you guys have a pay-as-you-sell financing. I wanted to learn more about that because I think that's very different than what I've seen before.
Yeah, it's so I think that's one of the unique things that we've done is that we took a very different model, right? So we're doing this very new, and essentially the way it works is it's a consignment model. So consignment, I don't know if you're familiar with like these like stores where you've got grandma's chair and it's like, hey, if you sell grandma's chair, give me like $50, right? And I'll be happy. And you can like take it to a consignment shop, they'll sell your thing for you, and then you get a cut. So that is the agreement, the underlying agreement of Kickfurther. So our community buys the stuff, they own it, but they place it on consignment with our business owners. And then the business owners have every reasonable means that they can use to sell that inventory, and it triggers that consignment clause. So let's say they fund 100 pieces of inventory, and then a week later you've sold 5 pieces. Well, those 5 pieces have triggered that consignment contract, and you have to pay our community back for the 5 pieces of inventory that essentially no longer exist. Let's say we fund the inventory, and this is obviously nobody's best case scenario, but if the inventory funds and it doesn't sell, right? So we thought it would sell 100 units in 6 months. We've only sold 50% of the inventory in 6 months. At that point, we can decide to cancel the consignment, and the inventory, which is what the people own and where their interest is, that goes back to the community, which Kickfurther helps to distribute. So that's kind of like the worst case scenario, is that the inventory exists, and then people have to decide whether they want to put it through Kickfurther liquidation, which is a service we offer, or whether they want to take delivery of it. And these people are buying into this inventory at cost price. So we've seen a lot of people say like, yeah, sure, I'll take like 3 down comforters for $70. That seems like good, So we've seen people take delivery. We've seen people use liquidation. Typically, if you're getting like a pallet, if somebody put in $10,000 and they're getting a pallet of like mouth guards, they're not going to be interested in giving out mouth guards for the rest of their life. So those are the people that we'll see use liquidation.
But there is a background. There's a way out there.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, as long as the business doesn't sell the inventory and not pay us, right, which is just a breach of the consignment contract, then it's very, very low risk for the business, right? They get the inventory they need to sell. They can sell the inventory as best they can. We have our quality control process puts limits on how much we can raise, et cetera, right? But the idea is, as long as they follow the contract, as long as they're not breaching contract and using our inventory, selling it without paying us, then we are not going to put them in a position where we're going to make them go bankrupt, or we're going to take their car or their house or something like that.
Right. And that brings me to a really good question from one of our members here. When working with a larger retailer, what have you seen as far as effective getting paid on time, reducing the time between, when they place the order and getting paid, how can you squeeze that window down, as we're talking about kind of bringing things together?
Yeah. So what I would say is my best advice on this is the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So how can you reduce the time between when you have to pay for the inventory and when you get paid, right? So there's 2 things that can move there. One is when you have to pay for the inventory. So if you've got a good relationship with your supplier, you've been working with a factory for a year, 2 years, and you've never failed to pay them on time, then that's the time where you can say, or approach other factories and say, look, I've got a track record of success. I always pay on time. but I need somebody to be a better partner to me and offer me 15 days, right? Or 30 days, whatever helps on that cash flow gap. And that's something where if you have a history of buying and a history of purchase power, that's something that you can negotiate, right? And if your current factory won't do it, I guarantee you they have competitors and there are manufacturers, right? So it's like that's work that has to be done. That's one of the ways you can approach it, is by squeezing it on that end, supply side. Then there's the negotiation on the other side, right? Which is to negotiate with the buyer. And this is really depends on your relationship. It's hard to say, but if you have a good relationship with the buyer, it's something where you could say, look, this is putting me in a bad position. Is there a way, how can we get to a net 30 payment term instead of a net 60 payment term? How can I get paid in 10 days? Do you have a 1% discount, 2% discount? These are all different. These are things that a lot of people offer, but if you don't ask, sometimes they won't even make the option available to you. And then finally, what I would say, same tune of the squeaky wheel gets the oil, is staying on top of your dates, right? So there are important dates that are going to trigger you getting paid. So if the inventory is supposed to be delivered February 1st, and your shipper told you that they delivered February 1st, you want your retailer to confirm that it was received February 1st. Because if they push out that receiving date for a week because they're backlogged or their warehouse is busy or whatever else the issue could be, but now that's a week that you're not going to get paid because it's not ticking the payment term for them. So you want to confirm these important dates, and you want to make sure that payables knows that your purchase order is coming up to be paid. And these departments will there's humans, right? They're human. They make human error. Stuff falls off people's desks. People forget, whatever. People get sick, right? So if you just know that your payment date is coming up in 2 weeks and you just call them up, hey, Johnny, just making sure, my PO is in line to get paid, right? It's in the outgoing payments. Yeah, everything's good. Don't worry. We're good to go, right? Getting that confirmation is just one of those things that you can do to introduce a safeguard, right? Because then you've got a confirmation, that you're on their radar, that you're set to get paid. And what will sometimes happen is they'll say, oh yeah, sorry, receivables aren't going to go out for another week. I've had that happen to me when I was running my merchandising business. And that at least gives you some visibility to know, all right, well, now I know I'm not going to get paid for another week. So let me figure out now, today, that I've got some time, right? Let me figure out how I'm going to deal with that. So a lot of it is just communication, negotiation, and, staying on top of it, making sure that the retailer you're working with understands that it's very important that you get paid on time.
That's it's that kind of advice that comes from a lot of experience, and it's really cool that you get to see that experience from your end, because you get to see the back end of all these deals, and you get to amass all of these kind of stories from all of that experience, and it just gives you a wealth of knowledge. And I appreciate you taking your time to share that with us today. If you could leave our audience with one tip on what they can do to be successful this year, what would that one tip be?
That's a great question. The one tip to be successful this year. Good question. I would say my tip would be that we are living in a world of unprecedented opportunities, that there are so many avenues of growth, like using your website. There are other places you can go to find buyers, to find the distribution channels. There are so many trade shows, so many opportunities to get your brand out there. To attach your name and your product to a new movement, right? So I just feel like there are so many opportunities that staying very aware and being willing to take risks on things that are new, that you don't understand, and being willing to learn, right? Like always be an active learner, because things are changing so rapidly in the world of retail that if you stop learning, you're going to be left behind so quickly, right? So always be learning, keep an eye out for what's new, and don't be afraid to try new things, because we're living in an amazing period of historical disruption, and I think we should all embrace that.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time today, Sean. It's this kind of experience that really allows us to all be smarter. So thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you, Joel. It was great joining you today.